I ain't afraid. I ain't afraid of your Yahweh. I ain't afraid of your Allah. I ain't afraid of your Jesus. I'm afraid of what you do in the name of your God.
Lead our chalice lighting, and they do so in honor of our trans relatives through history, and in particular those that were stolen from us through violence.
They Are Still With Us by Kathleen McTeague. I hope I said her last name right. In the struggles we choose for ourselves, in the ways we move forward in our lives, and bring our world forward with us, it is right to remember the names of those who gave us strength in this choice of living. It is right to name the power of hard lives well lived. We share a history with those lives. We belong to the same motion. They too were strengthened by what had gone before. They too were drawn on by the vision of what might come to be. Those who lived before us, who struggled for justice and suffered injustice before us, have not melted into the dust and have not disappeared. They are still with us still. The lives they lived hold us steady. Their words remind us and call us back to ourselves. Their courage and love evoke our own. We, the living, carry them with us. We are their voices, their hands, and their hearts. We take them with us, and with them, choose the deeper path of living.
I want to talk about choice. I want to talk about the fact that just because someone who is out to destroy you says you chose to be the way you are, does not mean the path of best protection is to counter it with, no, I didn't. It's not a choice. I was born this way, and I've always been this way. Is who I am, my sexuality and my gender, a deep and real part of me, close to my soul? Yes. Are there choices involved? Of course there are. I have made one choice after another to feel more at ease, more vibrant, more alive. I chose to change my name. I chose to allow myself to open to the idea that I might be attracted to men. I chose to open myself to the idea that, first of all, genderqueer people exist. Second, that I might be one. And third, that I might be attracted to other genderqueer folks. After all of this, I chose to remain open to the idea that I was still attracted to women and might actually like to be in a relationship with one. If I hadn't made these choices, I never could have lived into my full, authentic self. And you know, there are some things that are more attractive to me than gender. I am attracted to feminists. I am attracted to queer people and radicals. I am attracted to people who are assertive and like to make decisions. Is any of this biologically hardwired into me? Probably not. Is all of it impacted by culture? Definitely. But do I have every right to pursue relationships and experiences with whoever I want because it's my body and my sexuality? Yes. It doesn't matter with whom I seek intimacy, ecstasy, joy, or camaraderie. Sexuality is sacred, love is sacred, and I deserve and demand the right to full control over my body and what I do with it and who I share it with. If anyone ever tries to invalidate you or the way you seek intimacy by saying it's just a choice, tell them choice is sacred. Tell them the inherent right of every person to have full authority and agency over choices they make about their lives and their bodies is a spiritual and human imperative, that there is a word for this, and it's liberation, that there is nothing more worth fighting for. Tell them that in your faith tradition, you don't love people despite their differences or because they can't help being different. We love people because of their differences and because diversity enriches our world and our communities. Tell them that in the final reckoning, there is only one choice that will be judged, and that's their choice. Tell them you hope they choose love.
Our speaker today is Zayden Q. Zayden Q was born and raised here in Bismarck and has never lived anywhere else. They struggled with alcoholism starting at a young age, and it would take many years before they would obtain long-term sobriety. Through the growth of their recovery, they are finally able to come to a place where they felt comfortable and knowing and accepting themselves. They did not know, and by knowing and accepting themselves, they did not know how much their gender identity played into the familiar feeling of almost all addicts, of not belonging and feeling lost. They are here today to share some of their personal story. Please join me in welcoming Zayden.
Last Wednesday, the 20th, was Trans Day of Remembrance. And Trans Day of Remembrance is important to recognize that people are being murdered just because they were being who they were. We need to remember that these things really do happen and to honor those who lost their lives because they weren't going to let fear stop them from being who they were. But reflection on loss may at times induce even more fear, thinking that maybe we shouldn't be who we are to potentially save ourselves from death. However, what kind of life would one be living if they were constantly hiding, trying to fit into the norms of society and the majority? Would that even be a life worth living? Would that be living at all? I'm here to share with you what a life like that looked like and also share the recovery from that and why I refuse to no longer live my life in fear. So, Liz had mentioned I'm a recovering alcoholic. My sobriety date is April Fool's Day, 2015. The day I stopped fooling myself. That's what I like to say. Yeah, no. And yeah. It was the day I entered a sober living home here in Bismarck, and that was monumental and key to my sobriety because I started drinking at a very young age. I started drinking at the age of 10, actually. So let me give you a little bit of a background of my upbringing. So I was born and raised here in Bismarck, never lived anywhere else. I tried once this year to move, and God kept me here for whatever reason. I think there is a reason. We shall see. So, but the first memories I have are of my best friend, and he was a boy, and we did all the boy things, if you want to call them boy things, playing ninjas and Ninja Turtles. Those were my favorite, And so that's what I like to do. And I didn't know that was different or whatever until I went to school and was in kindergarten. And I had cut my hair short and I looked like a boy. And as soon as elementary school, I started getting teased right away. They would say, well, what do you want to be? You want to be a boy or something? And inside I'm like, I think I do. Because as soon as when I went to school at Solheim here, and they separated you by gender. It was boys and girls, and they would have the boys stand up to do things and the girls to stand up to do things. And I would stand up with the boys because I didn't want to do the girl things. I didn't like pink. I don't want to play with dolls, And they thought I was confused. And I don't remember this, but they did send me to gender counseling, and I have no recollection of it. Yeah, luckily, my mom is the one that informs me of these things because I, for whatever reason, have very vague memories. But I remember this helped formed what I thought gender meant as a child, that women were supposed to be this way and that boys were supposed to be this way, and you are that way because of your parts down here is what makes you that gender. And if you have those parts, you need to act in a certain way. And I didn't want to do that, and it was really hard. So I'd play with the boys, and the teachers would tell me, something would happen at recess, and the guys they pushed me or something, and I'd be crying, and the teachers would tell me, you can't cry if you want to play with the boys. So I was taught that if you want to hang out with these people or be like that, you can't have these emotions, you need to be tough, you can't feel, you can't cry, and all those things, I couldn't comprehend that stuff as a child, and I really felt like I did not belong anywhere because I couldn't fit in with the boys because I wasn't a boy, and I don't fit in with the girls because I don't like girl things, and I felt so lost and different from the age of 5, But I knew that I felt like I wanted to be a boy, but I don't know how at that young of an age I knew that required some kind of surgery and stuff, that I just wasn't it didn't seem like it wasn't an option. I also had no one to talk to about this. This wasn't things we talked about back then, especially not in my family. I'm quite the black sheep of my family, being, in second grade, I do remember asking my parents if they'd still love me if I was gay. I knew what gay was in second grade somehow. Well, I actually also have older siblings. They're 7 and 8 years older than me, so there was probably a lot of influence there as well. But I grew up in a home that, my parents they do love me. I know they do. They just don't know how to be truly supportive, but they think they are. They're also very Republican, and not if anyone's here, that's okay. Like, I'm just not, and I'm very liberal, progressive and different from that. So I didn't feel comfortable and safe even talking to my parents, and I didn't know that then. I can recognize that now looking back. So let's see. I know that I started drinking in 5th grade because I wrote in my diary that I met a new friend today, and she likes to drink like me. Alcohol was in my home all the time. My siblings were in high school when I was in elementary, so they were partying and stuff. And I really wanted to be, my siblings, when I was very younger, made me feel a part of, and then they got older, and then they didn't want anything to do with me. And so they'd be partying, and I'd be locked upstairs in the bedroom by myself, and then I'd be crying, and then I'd tell my parents, and then they'd tell me, don't be a tattletale. I think that might be some normal sibling stuff, I don't know, but it was just like, I've been such an outsider from the beginning of my family. And my mom tells me how she did, when I was a kid, I refused to wear a dress, and she had to call the school and tell them, I'll say she, my pronouns are they, them, theirs, I'll get into that in a sec. She refuses to wear a dress. I will make sure she wears something nice, but she's not going to wear the dress. My mom had to fight tooth and nail to, not have to wear a dress back then, and I know things have changed since then. So, she tells me these things, but the only thing I can remember is in middle school was her trying to get me to not dress like the skaters at that time, and yeah, the other kids that I grew up in a nice neighborhood, but I didn't hang out with those people because they weren't nice. People who were maybe lower income were so much more accepting and welcoming, and those were the friends that I had because they didn't care, they welcomed me and accepted me, and my parents think they're horrible people because they do drugs and whatever and drink, but yet they don't recognize their alcoholism is not for me to decide if someone else is an alcoholic in my family, but I can say that it's all very heavy drinking, and it causes chaos and confusion and dysfunction. However, they are very functional. They didn't lose jobs, so it's like, it's harder to see the problem when you don't have low bottoms typically, and you can still get by in life, but yet they can't see the chaos that it's causing in their life. So, I pushed the gender identity down, but I knew I was gay. And once I got to 7th grade, depression hit me for no good reason that I could figure out, and I just wanted to die, and I couldn't figure out why. I started cutting, and I saw the counselor, and I had no one to talk to about being gay, about my gender. And so, I just thought, and I didn't want those to be the issues. I didn't want to be, I wanted to fit in so desperately. I didn't want to be the gay kid. I didn't want to be the trans kid, because that's what happens in those ages, in those years. So I would form myself to be who I thought society wanted me to be. When I tried to fit in with the guys, I'd be kind of a player and a womanizer, and I felt like I was the best guy by how many women I could get and things like that, and throwing the best parties and just having absolutely a false sense of self. And I was trying to find anything I could to feel like I fit in and belong and felt connected, and I became this person who is not me. And coupled, when I hit 7th grade too, that's when I found drinking and relationships were my solution. When I drank, I didn't live in that fear. I wasn't afraid of what people thought of me. I wasn't afraid to go talk to somebody. I wasn't afraid to make friends and be whatever, and I was like, this is what I need to be okay, because there was nothing else that made me feel okay. I was going to counseling. I didn't tell my therapist that I was gay. I denied it. I said I had a girlfriend at the age I started relationships in 7th grade, and I didn't tell her about my girlfriend. I denied it with my parents and stuff. They caught me all the time. They knew, but we don't talk about those things, we're okay with it, but just we don't want to see it. I don't want to talk about it, but it's okay. But that is not supportive, and that sends such a mixed message. And I grew up of a childhood with so many mixed messages, and I had no idea the impact that had on me until I was able to finally get sober and sit back and reflect and do inventory. So just fast forward, like, you don't need to hear the whole drunkalogue. I went to like 8 treatments, but I went to my first treatment at the age of 16. I was a blackout drinker. Every time I drank, I blacked out. I knew I had a problem, and I continued drinking in that fashion for the next 13 years until the age of 29. And I went through, someone shared in here about mental health, and that almost brought me to tears, because it's so sad to me how bad our mental health is here in North Dakota, and how we don't have resources and we don't have support for these people. And that really hits me in the heart, because I was depressed at 12 and I didn't know why. And I lived in depression my depression was probably lifted when I was 26, actually. It happened before I got sober, and I don't know how, other than, so all the treatments, I even went to a faith-based one, which was really terrible. Oh, like, I'm still healing from that. I kind of have a resentment against Christianity in a sense, because, geez, I'm going to hell and abomination. That was so bad, you guys. Okay, yeah. But I did actually, I try to take the good from the things I learned, and I started building a relationship with a higher power at that time. But I did not like their higher power, because their higher power told me I was going to hell, all that stuff. So I ended up, throughout all the years of treatment, I was in and out of the rooms of AA. I do not represent AA. It's a 12-step program. But what finally brought me to a turning point? People talk about, a bottom, like I'm gonna hit this rock bottom. Things are gonna get really bad. I'm gonna lose all these things. Things are gonna happen, and that's gonna be the change. And you would think that it would have been after my third DUI, my fourth arrest, when I was a .607, and they couldn't tell me what I did. I'm in the jail cell. Oh, let's talk about jails for a second. So I'm in the jail cell. I'm in the drunk tank. They can't tell me why I'm arrested. There's another lady that comes in. She's homeless. She ends up peeing herself, and she asked for another mat. They say, we're not going to give you one. You turn it over and have to sleep on it. It's so cold in there. I'm going through DTs. I am going to probably have a seizure, and I'm freezing. They won't give you a blanket. They won't give you a pillow, and I am just dying. So I go and cuddle with the homeless lady, because we were both dying of freezing, and I'm like, look, I need to get some medical attention. They finally get me over to the hospital, and they said, sorry, we can't treat you because you're under arrest. And people do die in the jails here from withdrawals, and they don't get the medical attention. It's a whole system. Yeah, I'm going to preach about things. Okay, no. So anyway, that's another story. But, that like, you'd think things like those would be my bottom. Well, my last drink ended up being, I was kind of functioning in life. I started seeing things differently. I met a girl again, and, but actually, she was actually quite monumental in helping me see life differently. Being in a depression and feeling so different, and like I didn't belong and wasn't accepted, and like I burned a lot of these bridges. Don't get me wrong, I'm an alcoholic. I did a lot of selfish, thoughtless, horrible things in blackouts, and that I don't remember. I've done probably so many more things that I have no idea that I did. So I'm not innocent. However, I hated myself, and for multiple reasons, for doing those things when I was drunk, and then I had to keep drinking to not have to feel that, to feel the guilt and shame that comes along with those things, and then to couple it with the being gay and trans, which I didn't know at the time that I was trans. I just ignored it and pushed it down. She helped me. In treatments, they ask you, what makes you happy? Like, what do you like to do in life? And I could never answer that question, ever. And she finally helped me realize something. She said, just because you did bad things doesn't mean you're a bad person. Because I had internalized for so long that there's something wrong with me, that I'm a bad person, and that was who I identified with, and I took that, and because this girl she saw something in me and made me feel like not a horrible person and loved, and so I started to kind of look at that, and I was like, you know what? I think I know what makes me happy. It's being a good person and doing the right thing. And when I was finally able to answer that question, I was able to make some changes in my life. And I started to see things differently, and I started to look at people differently. And maybe the world isn't so horrible like I thought it was. Maybe not everyone was treating me as terribly as I thought they were. Maybe there are good people out there that do care and that will love and accept me for who I am. And magically, however I believe in the law of attraction and metaphysics, these things started coming into my life. And I found people that were loving and accepting, and a church that loved and accepted me, because that was a big factor for me at the United Church of Christ. And people that actually practiced what they preach when they said, we love you and accept you no matter what, and actually do that. Because there's a big difference, and the churches here that say we welcome and accept everyone, and then find out you're gay, and it's like, well, maybe that was conditional. But the biggest factor for me was the 12-step program, and I was in and out of those rooms for years and years and years, in and out, and the same people were there. And every time I came back, the same people would open their arms and hug me and tell me they were happy to see me when I was so full of hurt and guilt and shame, and they told me to keep coming back. And they told me to let us love you until you can learn to love yourself. And that's what I did, and that's what kept me coming back. That's the power of the 12-step program, along with working the 12 steps and a higher power and all that too. But it's all connected. It's all connected. And I believe it was that human connection is what I needed to help me get to the next point in my life, to finally be able to be willing to go to any length for my sobriety. And that's what it took in my last psych unit stay. Something came over me, and I understand that now as what people usually say in the rooms as the grace of God. I just believe in the higher power of love. That's what God is to me, and that seems to be what most religions actually say it is. So I guess we're in agreement there. Because you know what? What I did a life of separating myself. I separated myself in so many ways and saw myself as, we call it terminally unique. So unique, it's gonna take my life. And it's true. It's true. I separated myself and couldn't see that actually if you take away all that stuff of how different we are, we're actually a lot the same. We all need the same thing. We all need love and acceptance and to feel like we belong. That everyone needs that. We aren't so different as we think we are. And so I stopped separating myself. And I started seeing people as all my brothers and sisters, and that you're all my family, because we're all children of this earth, And that helped me a lot, because what I was doing to those people who didn't accept me and hated me, I did the same thing back to them. I hated them right back. And you can't fight hate with hate. That's not going to get you anywhere. History will tell you that. So my motto is love is always the answer. Whatever comes up, I fight fear with love. I don't want to go back to living that life in fear, because I saw where it took me. I almost died. I should have died so many times. But obviously I'm here for a reason, and more will be revealed to what that reason is as I go along. But I can't believe how much it's changed. I wish people could see me from the depths of when it was the worst, of how much I was a walking zombie and dead to the world, on a bunch of psych meds that I didn't need to also be on. But I played a part in that too. It's a night and day thing, and I know the struggle of what people go through, I was a hopeless case. I was the person that came into the hospital all the time. They're like, what more can we do for you? You've been here how many times now? I was that person. And you just never know what it's going to take or when that turning point might happen. But, I'm so glad someone believed in me. There was one person at least at one point in my life, and it actually mostly ended up being my mom, who told me just don't give up, don't give up. And I didn't, and it was completely miserable. But it was that love that kept me going. I say that I wasn't guilted and shamed into sobriety. I was loved into sobriety, you know? And that's why love is always the answer for me. I was going to talk about my gender identity, but that's kind of my story. I guess I can talk about it real quick. Okay, so I identify as non-binary. So you guys, some people might be familiar here with that. The binary, people understand it as the male and female. Just that's the only two sexes there are. The binary, non-binary is more of a spectrum. Here's female, here's male, and then there's a whole like line, sometimes circle. Like gender could be anywhere in there. So, and also, I do not represent all trans people. Every trans person has their own unique experience, and mine is very unique to everyone else's, so I don't speak for other people. This is just how I feel, and I feel that I've been quite blessed. Luckily, I was able to find my gender identity in a time that I really had come to a good sense of self. I got a good therapist, so there is some good mental health there, but I'm also privileged that I have a job and I have insurance to get these things and find a good one. So, however, I was able to find my core self, and like that is the part of me that matters to me. At the end of the day, my gender actually, I wish wasn't a thing. I wish I didn't have to say I have a gender. I wish we didn't look at people as gender. I wish I could just be seen as a person, you know? But so on the non-binary spectrum, I use pronouns they, them, theirs so that I'm not assigned a gender when you start talking to me. But actually, in a safe space, I really don't care, because at the end of the day, I actually really don't care, because my gender, for me, it doesn't make me who I am. It doesn't change that core self that I know I have of myself. So yeah, yes. So I'm very blessed to feel that way and to have gotten to that point, and I'm very grateful for that.
Closing words are, "You Matter" by Matthew Roxon. You matter. There is no one like you, never will be again, from the birth of the earth to its outmost end. You, an eager shout, a sacred yes, that moves your flesh, your bone, your breath. You, he, she, ze, they, you, are whole and okay, gracefully teaching your truth and your way. You cannot be forgotten. We cherish you so. Your voice in your hands can do more than you know. You see old things anew. You turn them and test them. Your wonder exhausts our words to express them. You speak and lay bare all you dig up and hold aloft from the dust of conventions grown cold. You upend every rock and pursue every glimmer and give a new name to each sparkle and shimmer. You chart out new paths, go beyond our horizons, new friendships, new stories. Your hope is always rising. You, welcome and wanted, whatever your skin, wherever the neighborhood you were born in. You play across fences that keep us divided. Old walls become weak where your love is ignited. You call us to kindness and questions, reminding the life of our living is found in the finding. You, there are no one like you. There never will be again. From the birth of the earth to the outmost end. You matter. You do. We'll keep learning with you. Now stand on our shoulders and see what you can do.
It's killing us. I ain't afraid of your Yahweh. I ain't afraid of your Allah. I ain't afraid of your Jesus. I'm afraid of what you do in the name of your God. I ain't afraid of your churches. I ain't afraid of your temples. I ain't afraid of your praise. I'm afraid of what you do in the name of your God.